What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Neverlag. We're back at it for the final episode of the Kenobi series, episode 6. We're going to be sitting down talking about our thoughts. This episode specifically, the finale, as well as a little bit of our finishing thoughts for the season as a whole. Now that we have it in its entirety. So, thanks for joining us, Zach. How you doing today?
I'm pretty good. You know, the economy's rough, country's a mess, but Taco Bell has brought back their cheesy double beef burrito, and they have a variant with jalapenos. And it's the it's the little things in life that paired with the most recent episode of Kenobi that I'm excited to talk about has me feeling lightly optimistic. How are you doing?
There you go. I think people are going to be concerned that we're measuring the quality of our life by what Taco Bell has or has not brought back to the menu. But I'm doing good. Tired as usual, and I got my Avs hat, repping the Avs logo. They just won the Stanley Cup, and man, that was a lot of fun to watch them through the playoffs. So. Oh, that was fun. And we're going to find out if episode 6 of Kenobi was as fun as that. So here we are. All 6 episodes. I guess as usual, let's start with surface thoughts. How did you feel about this episode off the top?
I kind of liked it. A consistent
Pros.
theme with this show. I I think, as always, there are some really cool moments in it, and some things that don't fully make sense to me. Overall, I liked it. I thought this had some of the climactic moments I was looking for, though there were elements of that kind of climax that didn't fully hit everything I was hoping it would. Without like specifically getting into it, I think that's kind of how I'd phrase it. So it was pretty good. I feel like overall this series it's a weird mix, but overall I think it feels like it's kind of set, not that you always have to give a number to something, but it's kind of in the 7 out of 10 range, right? Like it's not terrible. It's better than like a very average show. But it's also weak in some areas. And I think the final episode did a decent job tying things up while still not being perfect. So I had fun. This kind of felt a little bit like the 5th episode. We talked about how that kind of increased some of the quality a little bit of the series overall. It brought some of the moments we were looking for, and I think the 6th episode continued that. So it was fun. What about you?
Similar, probably a little bit less high on it. I think this was probably the second best episode behind episode 5. But that being said, I do think it was well below episode 5 for me personally. Some issues, some larger issues I found in this episode, and things that really just didn't hit for me that were supposed to be some storylines wrapping up. So yeah, it was okay. I enjoyed it more. Like honestly, if I were to go back and I'm not chomping at the bit to go back and watch this entire season over again. And if there comes a time where I want to rewatch it, I could see myself just rewatching episode 5 and 6, because the first 4, like we talked about, just really were. It was an interesting ride, but it averaged out to be subpar in my opinion. So I think it was a decent end to what was a pretty lackluster start, I would say. And number wise, I'd probably be a little bit lower on the season as a whole, probably somewhere around 6.5, leaning towards a 6 rather than a 7, just because. And we'll get into this. Those are my thoughts. Those are my top level thoughts. So
to kind of just piggyback on that real quick, I think that feeling of I would just rewatch episodes 5 and 6 kind of speaks to the fact that this probably should have been like a 2.5 hour movie. I also feel like we'll probably get into this yet again. I feel like some of the Riva stuff felt like it should have been a separate thing. And so it feels like they kind of tried to take a bit of a show idea they had and something that probably should have been a movie, and tried to merge it all together to make it one 6 episode season. And I still don't know that was the best way they could have. I feel like this could have been a really good um, movie, or even like a double feature. Give us 2 hour and a half long episodes of Obi-Wan. Um, but yeah, we can get into it. But that's
Yeah,
kind of my take on it.
I think at the end of the day, I don't care if it's a movie, I don't care if it's a series. I think the real problem was just writing and character development. Like if the writing's better, this is perfectly fine as a series to me. If the writing's better, it would have been a great movie. Like it could have been a, a solo type movie or Rogue One or that situation. That could have been fine too. But really, it just comes down to writing and character development, in my opinion. So, episode 6, where would you like to begin? Where would you like to begin on this episode? What
I
stands
mean,
out?
we kind of have two different storylines going on in the final episode here. One is Riva. So at the end of episode 5, Riva hears Bail Organa's kind of lazy voicemail message that he didn't really think too much about, and was just like, here's some secret info that I'm going to leave on your answering machine, on your little Jedi communication device. So Riva heard snippets of like Owen, and was able to put together that I guess that Luke was on Tatooine. I don't know how much Riva really knew, but she was able to put together that there was something on Tatooine that was worth her rushing off to go see. And which is I feel like there's a couple of times in this show where they make leaps and there might be some more logic behind it, but I don't quite know how the leaps make sense without some of that context. This was kind of another. We talked earlier about like, how does Riva know that Anakin is Darth Vader? There might be some explanation, but it felt like the show just kind of makes the leap, and then you just kind of have to go along with it. Felt that way a little bit with her going to Tatooine. Like, what does she expect to find there? How much does she really know? Either way, she's off to Tatooine to find Luke. And then the other storyline is Obi-Wan and the proto rebels on the run from Darth Vader and his Star Destroyer, and Obi-Wan decides, I'm gonna go face Vader and be a distraction, so all of the rebel folk can get away. So those are kind of the two different plot lines. Um, yeah, I don't know if you want to go deeper on any of the specific story beats. I think we could maybe kind of start with
No, I was curious which
Rivas.
plot line you want to start with.
Might as well
Rivas?
start with Rivas, because she's the one. Like, this, the episode starts with her on Tatooine. She's like kind of all in her robes, being trying to be sneaky, and then she force slaps a drink out of some random guy's hand, which felt the opposite of sneaky. So it's like, why do you have your hood up and everything if you're just going to force swat drinks out of people's hands? But um, I will say, in that beginning sequence, the music that kicks in feels more reminiscent of like the original Star Wars trilogy, which was really cool. So I liked that aspect of it. Um, but yeah, I felt like Riva's storyline, it was the less interesting of the two. Like, every time it cut back to her on Tatooine, I wasn't as interested in following that. Um, I don't know that I have a whole lot more to say until we get to later in the episode, when she actually finds Owen and Beru's farm, and there's a bit of a
Yeah.
confrontation.
So to speak to kind of what you talked about earlier, in case someone has just watched this review or reaction and not the other ones, we know that Riva saw Anakin during the Order of 66. She saw Anakin lose his crap and kill all the younglings and stuff, right? But um, the assumption that, or the connection she made between Anakin obviously going to the dark side and him being Darth Vader is a bit of a stretch. Like there's no way she could have absolutely known that, right? So the other thing is with the message that she found, I do think there was enough information there for her to kind of know what's going on Tatooine. Why doesn't Obi-Wan Kenobi have a password on his voicemail? That's probably the better question. But all that aside, I don't have any issue with her knowing to go to Tatooine. My bigger issue here, um, just to get into her storyline as a whole and how it wraps up. We talked a lot in episode 5 about how it it finally kind of validated her character that I think a lot of people weren't really connecting with through the first 4 episodes. It didn't do a good job of making us care about her. All of a sudden in episode 5, some really cool stuff, some really good just scenes and developments in her character that kind of almost made you wish you cared more in the first 4 episodes, and made it worth her being in the series, right? But here in episode 6, um, going back to episode five, actually, we talked about how we kind of wish that she had been killed by Vader, and that would have been a really cool, tragic story, tragic end to her character, very fitting. But the fact that she lives and then she gets this information, help me if you can, but I just don't understand her motive. I understand that she's lost her way, she's confused, she's very emotional right now. She's failed to do the one thing she's been trying to do for her entire life, but I just don't understand her motive. I don't understand why she's going to Tatooine. I don't understand why she even would remotely want to kill Luke.
Hmm.
I don't get it.
That's
And at
gonna.
no point during the show did, even at the end, um, or while they're fighting, she gets there and she's fighting, and we can go back and forth through her storyline throughout this whole thing. But Owen and I forget her name. What is it?
Baru.
Baru. Owen and Baru set up to fight her come nightfall, and at some point during their fight, I think Owen asks her, "What do you want?" or whatever, and she says, "Justice." And I'm just like, and that's like the closest explanation we get to what she's doing, and it
Yeah,
doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to me. So that's where I'm at with her entire storyline through episode 6.
I agree. When I talk about, I'm not quite sure why she thinks to go to Tatooine. That's part of what I'm getting at is her motivations. Like even hearing that there's a kid there and then he's maybe connected to this, I didn't fully understand like what her train of thought was. And my takeaway was that she had some warped sense of justice that Anakin killed all of these people that were close to her. So I'm either I'm going to kill his kid and get back at him that way, or B, his kid will be like him, so I'm going to stop it before it happens. But they don't answer that at all. Those are my two guesses, and they don't really tell you at all. It's just she has this idea that this is justice, and that's kind of her arc is grappling with that when she's confronting Owen and Baru and Luke. And I agree. I
Yeah.
don't think it makes sense. Like her whole goal was to get revenge on Vader. So the best answer I
I
can think of
guess,
is I'm going to get
yeah.
back at you by hurting your family.
Yeah, you say, okay, I guess that does make sense. I can't believe I didn't think of that, but it still doesn't make sense.
It
Like,
feels weak. Yeah,
I understand that she's like, oh, I can't kill Vader. Let me go kill his son.
that he
But
doesn't even know about.
that he doesn't know about, right?
Yeah,
She if she can make the leap that Anakin is Vader, she can make the leap that Vader has no idea where this kid is or who he
I
is.
would think
Otherwise,
so. Yeah,
why would he be on Tatooine in the middle of nowhere? So none of it makes sense. I understand she's lost as a character, but just this entire episode fell flat for me on her character and everything.
right. Well, I
Um,
wanted her to be lost, like with her arc and trying to figure out who do I want to become, but not lost in the sense of like her logic just not making sense. Like, what is your plan and why does this help you achieve what you think's happening? At least explaining that better, but ideally having having her have a plan that more fits what they're trying to accomplish, which is her deciding, do I want revenge at all costs against Vader versus do I want to let go of my hate and my pain? And I think that's what they're
yeah,
trying to get at thematically, but they did it, but it didn't really make sense like for her as a character. It's what the theme required of her.
yeah, yeah. Looking at it now, I can see what they were going for. She's grasping at straws to try and get some sort of closure on what happened to her. But yeah, as far as it hitting for me, as far as it connecting for me, it did not. You could take Riva out of this episode and I would have enjoyed it more. I felt it was just they had to dance around on eggshells to make this work because Luke can't see most of it, right?
Right.
And they
So
did a fairly good job of making it work. They blame it on the what is it, the Sand People or something. I can't remember at the beginning of the fight. He says
yeah,
the Sand People are back
the
or something.
Tusken Raiders, yeah.
The
And
Tusken Raiders, yeah,
when she's chasing him, she has her hood up. She doesn't have her lightsaber out. And then at one
yeah,
point, he's running on a rocky ledge, and she uses the Force to pull him down, which knocks him unconscious. So by the time she has her lightsaber out or whatever, like he never really gets a sense for what's going on. Which
yeah.
it works. It
So
feels a little bit contrived still, but I feel like it's serviceable.
yeah, serviceable for sure. And so yeah, those are my feelings. Looking back, I can see what they were trying to do now, but I just think that it was kind of like almost like they didn't know how to tie up her character, and this is what they came up with, and it fell flat for me. It didn't work. That being said, I really liked the throughout the entire show, I really liked Owen's character. I thought they did a good job with Owen, and it made especially him and Baru, the whole thing, them kind of setting up for this standoff, holding their own against a Sith basically or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it really showed how capable they were, and just added some depth to their character. That if you rewatch episode, I can't remember if it's four or
Four.
five, four where we see them die,
Yeah.
and so it's like it kind of gives you some context. Like they weren't just wiped out. I'm sure they put up a fight, and it was just kind of cool to see a little bit more of them. I
Yeah.
liked that aspect of the whole thing, but I think that's about the only positive thing I can say for her storyline. I mean, if you have anything more to add to it, we do have the end scene where Obi-Wan finishes his storyline. We'll get back to, but he comes back because he senses Luke is in trouble. Um, Riva decides not to kill Luke. She's standing over him with a lightsaber, about to kill him. And she has flashbacks to her being a Padawan, about to the same thing happening to her. And it's like, duh. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the point in the
Hitting
show.
us over the head with
Yeah,
it.
yeah, that's exactly why this
God.
makes no sense. Like you're gonna go slaughter a little kid, just like what it made no sense. But anyways, she comes to her senses.
It
She
it
brings Luke.
made Yeah, it was tenuous. Like thematically it made sense and it was enough that I was like, okay, but it didn't feel believable for her character. And that's I think where the disconnect really hit for me. I was like, I don't think she would I don't buy that she would be doing this exactly. So I wish they had
I don't
spent
know
the time
what
to
I
think
honestly
about
don't know
that.
what to buy with Riva's character, because I feel like I don't know what she would do. She's been all over the place for this
That's
whole
true.
series, and that's been half of the problem,
That's
is
true.
that we finally find out her motivation, and that it comes from a kind of a pure place, but also it's been darkened over time, and by
Right.
focusing on it, right, holding on to it. And it's just kind of hard to reconcile the reason why she's doing what she's doing, justifying some of the things she's had to do to try and reach that goal.
Yeah.
It just doesn't match up a lot of the time, and we see her doing like torturing Leia and like just doing things where it's like it's hard to imagine someone with her motivation going that far when it's
Yeah.
not like directly helping her cause. Torturing Leia is not going to help her kill Vader, really.
Right.
So,
And it feels like
anyways,
if she's so mad about a bunch of kids being wrongfully slaughtered,
yeah, and
it,
she
it,
almost
it
kills two in this episode or in the
I feel
season.
like
It's like,
that's the issue is it doesn't feel like it fits in. Like I can understand her being violent and killing people for the Empire and being duplicitous, but you'd think like her character would draw the line at children or something, and they would
yeah,
show that where she like has a chance and she's like, I'm not gonna hurt a kid, and then maybe her leadership is like, well, you're an inquisitor, you have to do this, and that's where you kind of see that inner conflict she has of she's not good, but there's a sliver of good in her rooted from this core trauma she has. But in this, it's like she's inflicting the same pain on other children, and it just doesn't feel very believable. And then so it's like one, you've already tortured a kid, and now with this kid suddenly you feel bad about it. It just none of those little things add up. So I agree with that.
yeah. So at the very end, she says, "Have I?" She's talking to Obi-Wan, and she says, "Have I become him or whatever?" Basically alluding to the fact that her path has led her down such a dark path, that she's become just like Vader, and that she almost killed Luke, which she didn't. That was kind of cool, but anyways, that's her storyline. I'll let you go, but yeah, for me, it just, now looking back, I can see what they were trying to do, but it just didn't work for me, and it was not a great conclusion, in my opinion, to Riva.
I'd agree. Thematically, I really liked what they were trying to do. That's why I understood it. I was like, this is a cool idea. And the arc of her starting to become like him in service of taking him down. But instead of going all the way to the dark side like Anakin did in episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, she then decides to make a change, presumably. I like that. And I also like that tying in, and we'll get to Obi-Wan's whole thing in a minute, but Obi-Wan's kind of culmination, him re-accepting himself and his role as a Jedi and a mentor, and kind of giving her the wisdom of like, you can still make this decision, and the fact that you didn't do this speaks to the fact that you're not like him. You made the choice. So I liked that element of it, but it doesn't line up with a bunch of things she's done through the episode. So my issue is really, like you said, with the writing and kind of how they portrayed her character throughout in a way that feels wildly inconsistent for who the character is supposed to be, now knowing what we know. but I liked the concept of it. The execution wasn't very good, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. So there's Riva's storyline. I guess let's move over to Obi-Wan and Vader. They
Mhm.
as we kind of predicted in our last episode, pretty early on, Obi-Wan parts ways with the rebels and Leia to get Vader to veer off course and get a one-on-one for them, right? A matchup on some cool undisclosed planet that they'll land on, right? Some cool set piece. We kind of figured that would happen, and sure enough, he goes off in a little ship, and Vader is bent on pursuing Kenobi. He doesn't care about the rebels as much as he does Kenobi. So he orders them to chase after Kenobi, and then also he says something to the effect of "I'm going to fight Kenobi alone." So, so that's how we get it, and I understand that too. Like, fair enough. I understand his motivation makes sense that he wants to put an end to Kenobi on his own terms, um, a mano, as they might say. So, yeah. Before we get to the fight, do you have anything to add?
I kind of liked the moment where Obi-Wan gave Leia Tala's like blaster holster. At first it felt kind of cheesy, but then when she's like, where's the blaster? And he's like, Leia, you're 10. I'm not giving you a blaster. That was kind of funny. So I liked the joke, although I felt like it was a little cheesy that he would give her the blaster holster. Then when it comes to Obi-Wan going off in his shuttle and Vader being like, you know what, pursue him. He's ignoring his Grand Inquisitor who wants to keep pursuing the rebels. And the Grand Inquisitor's reasoning was like, we might be able to stamp out this rebellion before it even begins. And that felt fairly prescient. And I, I think what threw me off is like, I get that Vader is single-minded, like, I'm going to hunt down Obi-Wan, but then Vader just gets in a shuttle and flies off to the planet. Why couldn't the Star Destroyer just keep
Oh,
going after the
does he?
rebels? Yeah,
Oh,
he
that's
gets on
hilarious.
like the Imperial, what is it, like the T4 shuttle or
That's
whatever they're called.
hilarious. So they could have just gone after the
Yeah,
rebels, and
he
he
takes
gone
his own
after. Oh
shuttle.
my!
They could have kept going after the rebels, I think.
He's like, you
And then
stop pursuing them and sit here while I go down in a shuttle and fight Obi-Wan.
right, it's like sit here and wait over the planet while I. And so then I was like, well, maybe his shuttle's not long range, so they can't do that. But then later, when
Maybe.
Obi-Wan gets back to his shuttle, which we'll get to, Obi-Wan flies from that planet to Tatooine in his little escape shuttle. So it's like, I don't know. So I'm picking too hard at something that I don't think is intended to face this much scrutiny. But it
Yeah.
did feel a little silly that they didn't pursue the rebels while Vader pursued Obi-Wan.
Yeah, that is interesting. I didn't really pick up on that. So, in any case, we get Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi on some epic looking planet, and they they fight, right? They pretty much fight right off the bat. I can't
They
remember if
do.
there's anything cool he says right away. I remember the dialogue later. Pretty sure they just get into it. My main thoughts on this fight are that it was awesome. And secondly, I feel like we're definitely dealing with some power creep here in the Star Wars universe. Like
Yeah,
these
a little
these
bit.
two went full Avatar state in the middle of this duel, and it was just like it was awesome, but it's also like it feels like the Star Wars universe continues to feel like it needs to one up the last powerful Jedi, and we've never seen Jedi doing really what we saw in this fight. And Darth Vader is supposed to be the most powerful, force wielder in the universe at the time, so fair enough. But Kenobi, especially, doing what he did felt like such a reach after he has struggled to connect with the Force through this entire thing. Um, kind of barely regaining his footing even in the recent episode. To go from that to like raining meteors down on Darth Vader, just throwing him around like a rag doll. It was a lot, but it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed watching it. But those are also my thoughts. I'm like, man, we're getting some power creep here in the Star Wars universe.
Oh, so you hate fun? Is that it, Levi?
I hate fun. I thought we
um,
knew this.
no, I agree. It was fun to watch Darth Vader get pelted with boulders and see him like kind of muscle
That's
through
pretty
them.
cool.
That was pretty neat. But
Yeah.
it was a I have the same issue that like Obi-Wan has been struggling to access that side of him, so it feels like a bit much that he was able to do all of that. It also doesn't quite feel like his style. Like his style has always been a lot more reserved and controlled, and so I would expect Vader to use that attack on him. Um, and like he has always been more about finesse and precision. And uh, Obi-Wan's obviously pretty powerful as far as Jedi go, so I can buy that like he can go toe to toe with Vader to an extent. Um, but it was a
In his
bit much
prime.
in his prime. Well, even I mean, you know how the Force is. Like the Force kind of can help you transcend beyond your
I
age to an
do. I'm
extent.
quite familiar with the Force.
You've been there. You've trained.
We've all been there.
But I, it felt like the way he would return to form is by accepting the Force and following the kind of path of tranquility and precision. And so it would be something along those lines that would help him hold his own against someone as powerful as Vader versus him just using raw strength to rain boulders on him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that
I definitely
was a stretch, but
I expected him to start floating and have glowing eyes there. So, um,
yeah,
anyways, so we jumped a little bit ahead there. There's basically two parts to this fight. The first part is Vader destroying Kenobi, beating the crap out of him, and then the script is flipped. There we go.
right.
But the
So
first part of the fight, Vader's. I mean, it's even for a bit, and then Vader starts messing up Kenobi. He says, "Ah, your
right,
strength is returned, but your weakness remains." Pretty good line. Some cool choreography. Again, I thought the choreography in the past two
it was
episodes
good.
way better than it was in the first four. Like I don't
Yeah,
know if they just couldn't get the choreographer for the first four episodes, and then
I think
finally
I
they
think
showed
that's it.
up.
He was on
I don't
payroll for
know.
5 and 6. Yeah,
Thank goodness though. If we had the same choreography of the first four in these scenes, man, it would have just really sucked the life out of them. So choreography was good. The force back and forth ripping the giant boulder and then them fighting like giant boulder is not even a big enough term for what they were force fighting over. But at the end of it, and then man, that really cool move where Vader like ground slams and just the whole earth
yeah.
like they turned into earthbenders essentially is what happened in the
Basically,
fight.
yeah.
Um,
Which was
that
cool.
was really cool.
I didn't
Yeah,
hate it. I will say, so there's you mentioned the two parts of the fight, and at the end of the first part, Vader's been messing up Obi-Wan a little bit more. He does the ground slam, opens up a fissure in the ground. Obi-Wan falls into it, and then he starts piling boulders on Obi-Wan pretty hard. Uh, and then Vader's like,
well,
you
that's
were
done.
that's done. You were weak. And then he starts walking away, and it was like, is he really leaving him,
That's
not
that's
killing
what I
him?
was gonna say.
And
Yeah,
maybe that was intentional, but it felt like Vader keeps leaving people that aren't dead. And
no,
anyone with half a brain would be like, I should probably double check, especially
that
someone as
was
powerful as Obi-Wan is.
yeah, that was exactly the point I was going to get to next. Is that he buries Obi-Wan, and it's just that classic thing of like, well, he's probably dead, and he's like, I'm just gonna
Excellent.
head back to my space. Well, in a day's work, Darth
I would
Vader,
check,
and
but
it's
I'm
just
so
like,
confident in my
yeah,
abilities. Yeah.
I probably stabbed Riva somewhere vital. We should walk away and just
There's no
assume
way
that
I
she
stabbed
dies.
between the vital organs.
So yeah, it just keeps happening. When that happened, I thought if this is the end of their altercation, this is garbage. Like this is the dumbest thing because we knew they kind of had to separate at the end of this in some sort of way that makes sense. And I thought if he just buries him in a rock avalanche and is like, well, that's job done and goes about his life, and that's the end, the climax of their relationship to this point. I was like, man, this is so stupid. Thankfully, that was not the end, and so Kenobi's fine. Clearly, he's like holding back the rocks with the force, right? It's
Right.
essentially what it looked like. He gets his way out of there and he pursues Vader again, which I thought was cool. Like he didn't just go, well, I got beat and go home. So all in all, I'm glad that there was a part two. If that had ended their altercation, that would have been such a massive letdown and just kind of like a very weak send off for why they separated. But part two, Kenobi goes off. Like I don't know where it came from, but he goes off. He starts messing up Vader. He's force throwing him. He's
He got
chopping
in
him with a
tune with the
lightsaber.
force.
Yeah, he was in tune. So yeah, the second part of the fight I thought was also very cool. Again, we
Yeah.
get the raining boulders down, which felt a bit insane, but was still very cool. And then, man, the coolest part of this whole of everything, I think, for me, was when he essentially breaks Vader's helmet in half, and they get to have this conversation. and the way that they mixed the audio between
Yeah.
Hayden Christensen and Darth Vader, the robotic voice, um, just the way that it kind of went back and forth, and then
Hmm.
they were mixed together, and it was so expertly done. I didn't know I needed that, but that was like I think that might have been one of the coolest things, other than Vader pulling the ship down in Episode 5. That was like one of the standout things for me from this season that I'm glad that we have.
That was my favorite moment of the entire season, more than pulling the ship down. For the reason you said, I think what was really cool about it is, growing up, I loved the original Star Wars movies, and there was always Vader, this looming presence. And then we finally got the prequels, and I know there's like pros and cons of the prequel movies, but I was we were kids or preteens when those came out, and it was cool to see like how he became Vader, but it always felt kind of like there was before and there was after. And the whole point of this show is supposed to be a little bit of that in between of like, how do we get to where A New Hope left off? And I think part of that was the emotional side of what happens to Anakin and him and Obi-Wan's relationship. And this hit on that, and it made it feel like it bridged the two sides of Anakin's character, and it made him feel like this is still the Anakin that we saw, or a version of the Anakin that we saw from the prequels, who's now turned into something else, and he's now become Darth Vader, and he's both of these people at once. And it really bridged the two characters. And the fact that just that one moment was able to do that is why I feel like this show overall was worth it. I was a little worried to be like, does this show is like, can you justify this existing? And I think just that, it barely gets it over the line for me. But it was, and like you said, the way they did it, it would go back and forth. And so you'd start to hear Hayden Christensen's voice, and then it would go full into James Earl Jones, and then it would kind of be this weird robotic mix. It was just really, really cool.
Yeah.
Not to mention the writing that accompanied that, where
No, yeah.
this, I think one of my issues with the first half of the fight is they just get into it. And I was like, I wanted Obi-Wan to try and reason with him, and I wanted them to have an emotional moment of connection. And I think they get that here, where they kind of talk for a minute, and he's like calling out to him, Anakin. And Anakin says something to the effect of, Anakin's dead, I am what remains. And it's mixing between their voices. And it was just really cool.
Yeah, and to specifically about that line, he says Anakin is gone. And for that line, it's heavily Hayden Christensen's voice. And then the very next line, he pauses, I am what remains, is much more of the James Earl Jones Darth Vader voice. And it was just um,
It was really cool.
it was kind of on the nose, but it was also just perfect the way they did it. And then the combination of the two voices, they did such a good job with that whole thing. And then, like you said, the writing was actually really good for this scene. I thought just the whole back and forth, and then Kenobi apologizing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Kenobi just still feels such regret over what happened and blames himself. And for Anakin to say, "I am not your failure," and basically just said, you didn't kill you didn't kill Anakin, I did.
Yeah.
Um, it was just really good. It was just a really good scene, and it kind of does both for me. It justifies the season as a whole. It is probably my favorite moment in all 6 episodes. But at the same time, the other side of the coin is that it makes me, every time I get these moments, I feel a little bit gypped that we just didn't get more of it. We wanted to see that transition of Anakin to Vader and him struggling with that transition. And I mean, this is kind of the only moment we really get to see that in the
Yeah.
entire show. And I think I was definitely hoping for more of that, but not to take away the scene was fantastic. The lighting, we didn't even talk about
The
the
lighting
lighting,
was so
the way
cool.
the red lightsaber, the blue lightsaber, the way you can see part of his face, and it's half the mask, half his face. Just everything was perfect about that whole scene, I think. And yeah, just fantastic. So anything more to add in that scene?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, like the transition, kind of missing some of the transition from Anakin to Vader. I feel that too, but I feel like that's more of a problem with Revenge of the Sith than this series itself. But I feel that a little bit. Um, I think the only other thing I caught that was neat was it, like after that conversation, Vader says, "I will destroy you," and Obi-Wan says, "Then my friend is truly dead." and kind of you get the acceptance that Obi-Wan has just been avoiding for all this time, which I thought was a good character moment. And then he says goodbye Darth, not goodbye
Yeah.
Anakin. Like he's accepted who he's become,
Yeah.
and that's how Obi-Wan addresses Darth Vader in A New Hope. So it kind of bridges the continuity there, and I thought that was a neat detail for the end of that
Yeah,
conversation.
he opens the conversation with Anakin and
Mhm.
closes it goodbye Darth. And yeah, yeah, just expertly done from start to finish. That entire scene is probably the single most pristine, no issues with it.
Yeah,
I will say, as we move on towards kind of the very end of that, he says goodbye Darth, and he just walks away. And I just don't. I just it makes no sense. This too makes no sense. If he you think, okay, he loves Anakin. He never really could come to grips with killing his friend Anakin, right? We get that through the whole show, even when Reva says, "Do we want the same thing?" But here we are. He's sufficiently beating the crud out of Darth Vader, and at the very end, we get the realization, my friend is dead, and he says he addresses him as Darth. Shouldn't one of his biggest regrets, as much as he loves Anakin, no doubt one of his biggest regrets is letting Anakin live now that he knows he's Darth Vader, not
yeah,
not finishing the job, all of the deaths that have happened because he did that. And here he has Darth Vader, hobbling, and he decides to leave him and walk away. Like, how is that? How do you sleep at night with that decision if you're Obi-Wan Kenobi? I just couldn't come to terms with him walking away, even though he had to. I felt that they should have had something keeping him from finishing the job other than just him deciding to walk away, because that feels so wrong. Like,
yeah.
morally, that feels wrong
It's like not killing Hitler if you've been given the time machine and you're back.
for a
Yeah,
second time.
for a second time. Yeah, I agree. Kind of what I was hoping for. Something else I kind of wanted from Vader is in the original series. At one point, Luke is talking to either Obi-Wan or Obi-Wan's Force Ghost. I can't remember, but Obi-Wan says something like, I knew there was good in him once as well, and Luke is grappling with, can I save my father, like as a person, not just have to kill him. And it would have been kind of neat to see a moment of hesitation from Vader. Like Vader is this unstoppable evil force, but there is a sliver of good still there deep down, and that's obviously how he's redeemed at the end of Return of the Jedi. It might have been neat if like he was about like Obi-Wan accepted that Anakin was dead, and Obi-Wan like throws away his lightsaber or does some Jedi thing where he's at peace with everything, and he's like, or maybe he realizes I need to strike you down, and Vader then they fight again. Vader disarms him because Vader is still more powerful at the end of the day. But before Vader does it, Vader hesitates, and then something allows Obi-Wan to escape, where it shows as evil as Vader is, he still cares about Obi-Wan, even though he's proclaimed that Anakin is dead. And that would really tie into this idea of there's something in Vader that might be able to be saved someday. And so I wish they had somehow mixed those pieces in a little bit better. I agree, it was weird that he just walked away.
Yeah. Yeah, looking back at it, I think there are two solutions. One you said, where Vader actually has the upper hand again and chooses not to kill him or hesitates. Obi-Wan gets away. That makes a little bit of sense, right? There's still some good, something somewhere deep down. Or earlier on in the fight, before he says Anakin is dead, I killed him, I'm not your failure. Before all of that, he shows some glimmer of Anakin still in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of, squashes those embers out and says, Anakin's dead, I killed him. So that Obi-Wan still is kind of like, I still think there's something in there, but nothing
Right.
about their interaction whatsoever lends any sort of weight to the fact that Anakin is still in there. And we get that with Obi-Wan's reaction at the end. My friend is dead. So yeah, I think, I guess I said there's nothing wrong with the whole thing. I do think him walking away in the way that they did it really just feels bad for Obi-Wan as a character. Like, it's hard not to look at that and just be like, what a bad decision.
A
Like,
lot of
how many
suffering will happen for a lot of
how
people
many
because of
how
this.
much suffering has already happened, and how much more suffering happens between this and episode 6, the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I just thought that was crazy to make that writing decision
Yeah,
in that way for Obi-Wan, morally speaking. So
I agree. I agree.
um we get some closure with Obi-Wan and Leia. they kind of tie up their storyline. I don't have a ton to
Well,
say
well,
about it.
first, Obi-Wan, when he leaves Vader, he gets back into his shuttle and he has like a force premonition that Riva is about to hurt Luke, which far away. I don't know. It's kind of whatever. Sure, we need to get Obi-Wan back to Tatooine. So Obi-Wan goes to like help save Luke before he reunites with Leia and any of them. So Obi-Wan arrives at Tatooine and he runs up. Beru and Owen are calling out for Luke. They can't find him, and he says, "Come on, let's go into the Dune Sea." I guess he just that's where I think Riva would go, the Dune Sea. So they go off into the Dune Sea, and Riva approaches them holding the limp form of Kid Luke. And at first they think the worst, although you think Obi-Wan would be able to sense like the force in him or something. But Riva lays Luke down and he stirs and he's clearly alive. And so they then kind of have the moment of realizing Riva decided she couldn't hurt him. So yeah, that's kind of the scene that wraps up. We talked about Riva's ultimate arc of not being able to kill Luke, kind of culminates in her bringing him back to Beru, Owen, and Obi-Wan. And then Obi-Wan and Riva have this moment where they talk about, did I become as bad as Vader? And he's like, the fact that you've chosen not to, who you become now is up to you, which I think is also set up for a Riva show that they might make. But I liked that moment of closure, except that it wasn't earned for Riva, like we talked about. Like, I don't think they built it right. If they had built it right, I think that would have been a nice moment of closure for Riva. And I liked Obi-Wan coming back into the mentor figure is like a Jedi master. So it's like I almost liked that, but a lot of the stuff leading up to this with Riva just don't fit in with what happened.
Yeah, I don't have any more thoughts on Riva. We already went over her storyline. I agree with pretty much all of that. So,
And then we got one other scene before Obi-Wan reunites with Leia, and that's
yeah.
Vader on
So,
the lava planet.
oh, what is that? I'm forgetting that.
So,
Is this when the Emperor? Is this our Emperor? Okay, so we
yes,
finally get to see the Emperor, and so actually, part of what I was going to bring up is we finally get to see two characters. We've kind of been low key waiting to see right through this
right.
entire season. I think one of which was fantastic. The other really felt lackluster, in my opinion. The Emperor, I thought, was fantastic. Him showing up, and I love how Vader is like, will pursue Obi-Wan at all costs. Like, he will not get away again. I love the Emperor's response. He's like, "You mad, bro? Like, you seem agitated,"
Mm-hmm.
and basically calls into question like, this is your personal beef. Like, is
Yeah,
this going to be a problem? Can you let this go? And immediately Vader's like, no, yeah, Kenobi
Kenobi
means
means nothing to
I
me.
serve you. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I kind of thought Vader's flip of the switch was a little odd, but I loved the Emperor's very low key, calm, like, you seem agitated. It was so perfect.
it
I
was
loved
it was
his.
really really great. What I think Vader's flip of the switch was him realizing, oh shoot, I'm letting my personal stuff bleed into this, and the
Sure, yeah.
Emperor, and he realizes like he does serve the Emperor. So I thought that was Vader being like, oh no, I'm good. Like, even though he still clearly has a problem with Obi-Wan and wants to find him,
Yeah.
he realizes he has to like separate his personal life from work a little bit more. Um, and just him being on a lava planet in it, like a throne room. I don't know why he would have that, but it was cool visually. And then after that conversation with Palpatine, the Imperial March theme, which I've been waiting for, like it's a Darth Vader, partially a Darth Vader show. I've been waiting for that to play, so it was kind of nice to like finally get John Williams' Imperial March as it like zoomed out after that conversation. That was
Yeah.
kind of cool.
It was cool, and it was their needing to kind of put closure on the fact that these two don't see each other again until
Yeah.
the original trilogy. So yeah, I thought it served its purpose, and I thought the Emperor's little cameo comeback was perfect. Um, the other cameo, this is kind of jumping around, but we finally get to see Qui-Gon Jinn, uh, kind of unceremoniously. I thought this was just kind of,
It was a little
I don't.
odd.
It wasn't the payoff that I think we were waiting for with this. It was just like, oh, there he is, and he says a couple lines that it just didn't have the impact that I was expecting or waiting for when Obi-Wan would finally reconnect with Qui-Gon Jinn. It felt very nonchalant and kind of caught me off guard.
Yeah.
Um, So those
I
are
feel
kind of,
like,
I don't have too much to say about it, but those are my thoughts on his finally getting to see him in this series.
yeah, I would agree. Like, he hasn't seen Qui Gon presumably since the fight with Darth Maul, and that was such an emotional moment. At least as a kid, like when Obi-Wan's master's killed in front of him, um, it felt a bit unceremonious as well. I really thought they were going to bring him back. There's one point before Obi-Wan goes to face Vader. He's like about to leave the proto rebel ship, and he says, like, he's like trying to get ready, and he says something about Qui-Gon, or he thinks about Qui-Gon. I was like, oh, they're gonna show him, like, Qui-Gon's gonna hype him up and help him. He's like, I need to confront Vader. And it reminded me of the in Return of the Jedi, when Luke needs to confront Vader, and Obi-Wan's Force Ghost appears to like help give him a boost, so that he's ready for it. I thought that was going to happen. I think that's probably what everyone thought was going to happen. That didn't happen. And then he shows up just randomly at the end to like lead Obi-Wan into the desert. I think that could have been fine to have him briefly at the very end if there had been a moment of meaning that he had shown up in. But it's just like the story's all done. Obi-Wan's already at peace. He's already
Hey,
had his
kid,
arc.
here
Yeah,
I
and he's
am.
just, yeah. So it's like if he had already interacted with Qui-Gon in a moment that was pivotal, and Qui-Gon helped him fulfill his character arc and be
Like why not have before Kenobi meets up with Vader on this planet, right?
right.
Before Vader finds him, why not have a moment where that's where Qui-Gon shows up,
Yeah.
and then it kind of further justifies and explains why Kenobi is so reconnected with the Force in that
Right.
fight scene. That would
Right.
have
That's
made
what it
way more
felt like.
sense. It would have been a
That's
more climactic, pivotal moment in the story. At the end, it was just like, oh yeah, Obi-Wan or Qui-Gon Jinn probably needs to show up in the show. Let's put him
yeah.
in here.
Yeah, he should have
So,
shown up and been like, he should have been like, I'm not sure I'm ready to face him. And Qui-Gon appears and is like,
yeah. Oh, that would have been so
you
much
need to
better.
find acceptance if you're going to stay in tune with the Force. And then you could have had him say something like, you told me to raise and teach the boy, and I did that, and I failed, and he became this monster. And then Qui-Gon could give him some assurance that you did the best you could. We all make mistakes. Anakin has chosen his path. You need to accept who he decides to become, but you have to confront him. Something
Man,
like that.
that
And
would have
then
been
when he
so much
confronts
better,
him,
dude.
and then he would have like been, it's like, oh, of course he's in contact with the Force. And then, if you want to have Qui-Gon at the very end be like, hey, I'm going to come hang out in the desert with you, whatever. I didn't
Fine.
really have an issue with it, other than it felt like they missed the really pivotal emotional moment, like you said.
Yeah, and their conversation could have been so much more meaningful at that part in the
Right.
story, like you just talked about, than it was at the end. So, anyways, those are our two
It was
characters
cool
we've
to
been waiting for. We
it
got
was
to
cool to
see
see
them.
Qui-Gon again. I'll say that.
It was cool to see him. Yeah, it just was like, man, that felt like a whiff. That felt like such a whiff
I agree.
with the buildup over the whole season. He's trying
I
to
know.
contact Qui-Gon, and then
I
there it is.
know.
So, um, the one other quick thing I want to mention before if we have any thoughts on the Leia side of things, we do get Obi-Wan comes back to Tatooine at the end, and to kind of have some closure with Owen. Owen says, "Hey, I thought you were going to make yourself scarce." He's like, "I am." He starts walking away, and he says, "Do you want to meet the boy?" And so apparently this is a meme I was unaware of, but he walks up to Luke and just says, "Hello there," and then it cuts away. And
Yeah.
I was just, as I was watching this, I was like, "What the heck was that?" That was so awkward and cringy. And so I was informed that apparently this is a meme for
Yeah.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, the "hello there" thing, and
It's kind of like
that's
one of
all.
his catchphrases.
Yeah, apparently. So that's all fine and good, but I just felt like it was a weird moment to do that.
Yeah.
Again, it just was weird timing to throw in kind of a cringy meme in the middle of a show when it's like he's meeting Luke Skywalker for the first time, and
It,
it
it
was
was
really
too much
weird to me.
it was too much fan service, because
It
I
really
kind of
was
found it amusing, because that
misplaced.
is one of his lines, is hello
Yeah,
there. And so it was kind of fun to hear him say it, but it felt like, Elvis in his final years, and it's like he's playing up the bit, and it's a little bit too much. Like, it was just, we don't need to see you relive one of your moments that we all love from an earlier episode. Like, play out the story the way it should. I agree with that. It
well,
makes
and there were so many lesser moments in this series that we could have had that kind of dorky fan service for.
yeah,
This felt like such a misplaced moment to do that, like kind of
yeah.
a build up. He's meeting, and then and then they throw it in there, and again, kind of back to the Qui-Gon thing, just weird weird choice at a weird time, in my
I
opinion.
think I think it would have been more impactful because, like, Owen saying, "Would you like to meet him?" It was kind of like some growth of, "I'll let you be a little bit of a part of his life because you're going to keep a distance and I trust you more."
Right,
And
you
it
can
makes
be
sense.
Ben,
Like,
Uncle Ben.
Luke grew up knowing of Ben. Like, he knew Ben not super closely, but he knew him. So it was like I kind of liked him saying, "Would you like to meet him?" But I feel like it should have cut there. Like, Obi-Wan should have a reaction of his face being like smiling a little or something, like where he's like,
Yeah.
"I actually get to meet this kid I care about." And then it just cuts and he leaves the rest to your imagination. You're like, so he's
Oh
gonna
yeah,
get to
that's what
meet
I
with,
thought they were gonna do. That's what I
yeah,
thought they were gonna do. I guess the one thing I will say to it is that Luke thinks of Ben as the weird old guy, right? Later on,
right.
so maybe that tracks. Maybe that's wise because he
Hello
walks up to him
there.
and he's like, "Hello there." So, anyways, there's that moment. As far as Obi-Wan and Leia's character arc wrapping up, I thought it was heartwarming.
Hmm.
It brings a lot of context to her knowing Obi-Wan, obviously later on in the original trilogies.
Yeah,
I don't have too much to say. I thought it was all just good. I don't have any issue. Nothing really stood out to me with their character relationship um, wrapping up.
I liked it. I thought it was good. I liked that as he's sitting, he like kneels down to talk to Leia, and like a little bit of Leia's theme from the original trilogy like intersperses the musical score, which was great. It's nice to hear some of the motifs from the original Star Wars. It just brings so much extra weight and emotion, and I get that it's a bit of a cheat code, but it's also an important part of the series, so it was nice to feel that. um, and then it was kind of nice, Obi-Wan saying, you have these great qualities from your mom, but you also have some of these great qualities from your dad. And it kind of showcased that he's accepted that there was a good part of Anakin that he cares about, even though Anakin has chosen to become something else. And he sees that the good side of Anakin in Leia. And I thought that was kind of poetic, and I wasn't expecting that. I liked that. And then at the end, when Obi-Wan tells her, "May the Force be with you," and the Force theme kicks in, that was pretty cool. And that felt like Obi-Wan is kind of reaccepted. He's still in hiding, he's still on the run, but he's accepted that he's a Jedi. And so that was all cool. It's a little weird that he just walked away from Vader, like we talked about, but aside from that, I thought it was a nice wrap up to him and Leia's story, and it sets up how she knew of him, for the future one in a way that I thought was relatively believable.
Yeah. Yeah, it shows good growth for Obi-Wan's character that he is able to talk about Anakin with her to some extent and mention his good qualities. It also shows good growth in his character that at the beginning he says that the Jedi are done. Like there's that time period is over, and then he finishes with "May the Force be with you." So a lot of growth from his character we see, and then also we see the growth in Leia's character where she kind of is finding her footing as far as how she's going to lead at the end because she's really not vibing with the whole senator situation in the beginning of the season. So I thought all in all it was a pretty good conclusion there. I guess from here I was just gonna kind of speak to the whole season more. We kind of referenced it in the beginning, but you said a 7 out of 10. I mean, do you have anything more to say as the season as a whole? Anything? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, seven. I don't know. I'd say it's 7 out of 10. I think there's enough really cool moments that make it fun and worth watching. Um, I think overall, I don't think this should have been 6 episodes. And you talked about if it was only written better. I agree with that, but I also feel like part of the reason they struggled is because they didn't have the material for 6 episodes, while simultaneously trying to jam in a very separate storyline with Riva. Um, I kind of wish it was like 3 episodes that were way stronger than 6 episodes where multiple of them felt like filler. Um, a lot of issues with kind of the writing and the build up and the character arcs, but the payoffs were overall pretty good. Um, yeah, there's some great moments that I think I'm glad I experienced. I don't know that I'll ever rewatch the entire miniseries, but I'll probably rewatch a few parts from some of
Oh, of course we
those
will
later
at some point.
episodes.
Are you kidding
Um,
me? Everyone rewatches every Star Wars at some point if you
yeah,
like
that's
Star
probably
Wars,
true.
right?
It's
So
probably true, but I'm in no rush either. So I think across the board, it's weird because I think there are moments that are like a 9 out of 10, and then there are moments that are like a 2 out of 10, and it
right.
kind of averages out overall. So I'd give it a 6.9, 7 out of 10. I recommend it if
You
you like
know,
Star Wars.
you don't got to
Um,
bring it down for my sake.
No, that's kind of the room I'd place it in,
I,
depending on
I
how
agree
generous
though.
you're
I
feeling.
What's interesting about let's say a 7 out of 10 score is that the first 4 episodes really felt like 5 out of 10s.
Yeah,
Maybe bottoming at a 4 out of 10, but the final 2 episodes were good enough and had such good moments in them that it literally elevates it from that score to more of a respectable average 7 out of 10. I will agree with that. Um, just imagine if all 6 had been like that. But what's interesting to me as I look at this whole series, excuse me, all 6 episodes, is that on paper, everything sounds so great. Truly, like every plot thread sounds fantastic. If you were to tell me, oh, okay, we're going to develop Obi-Wan and Leia's character and their relationship together. We're going to develop Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi. We're also going to develop a new character who was a youngling at the time of Order 66 who barely survives the slaughter of Anakin. Like, there's just so many parts to this show that sound so cool on paper, but just weren't executed very well um, on so many levels, whether it was writing or pacing or plot holes. So that's kind of where I land on this. I think they actually did have some really good pieces on paper. It just didn't come together the way I wish it could have.
yeah.
So those are kind of my closing thoughts on it. As far as Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor apparently have said they want a season 2. They would
What do
like a
you
season
do
two.
with a
Would
season two?
would
I
Here's the question: would you like a season 2, Mister Zach?
I feel like the odds of a season two sticking and landing well are pretty low. Like, I feel like it would detract from what they've kind of managed to accomplish, despite some of the whiffs we've talked about. I don't know what else you do. Like, part of me wants to see more Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor together, because I think they have good on-screen chemistry. I have like a history of seeing their characters together. I like those emotional moments. But what do you do? I feel like they've gotten it to the place where it's like, now there has to be 10 years before A New Hope starts. You can't really have Vader and him interact again. So unless they think of a way to like do some flashback stuff from the Clone Wars, and maybe the modern day story is like Riva stuff. I don't know what you do with Obi-Wan at this point. Like, he's in the desert chilling with Qui-Gon's ghost. Like, I don't know how you make a season 2 out of this that doesn't detract from this season as well as A
The
New Hope.
original trilogy.
So I don't know. I'm sure Disney will do it for the money.
I'm right there with you. When they said season 2, I'm just like, so this entire season was supposed to be like this was your one shot. This was your one shot to have Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen back together. It doesn't make sense for their storylines to intersect in any sort of way from here on out. You're going to really start to muddy the waters of anything that may, because they have to separate at some point. Like
Yeah.
the more time that they cross paths, everything gets messy. The other thought I have is, let's say it is called Obi-Wan Kenobi. Do I want a season 2 of Obi-Wan Kenobi if it features less Darth Vader? No, I don't, because honestly, I just don't see how you write, like, what is Obi-Wan Kenobi gonna do over the next 10 years that's that interesting to watch? He
He's
can't
just
make
in the
too much
desert.
he can't make too much noise, like
Yeah.
otherwise Vader will come knocking, right? So I don't think there's no room for his character to do anything in the universe, really, as much as I maybe wouldn't mind seeing more of him. So that kind of rules out Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't really want to see any more Riva. We're going to, but is that Obi-Wan Kenobi? No, that's a different series.
Yeah.
So I just don't. Yeah, season 2 of Obi-Wan Kenobi makes no sense to me. I would much rather, honestly, um, I like what we got here. I like some pieces of what we got here, but I would much rather get a series that just focuses on Darth Vader over these 20 years, right? Where he's hunting the Jedi, where he's doing what he's doing, maybe early on battling with, um, you know, any good that's left in him. I thought we were going to get more of that here. I would love a series that really focuses on that. And also, I think you would have to tiptoe a lot less because Vader's out there causing mayhem for like 20 years that we don't get to see. You could have him doing all kinds of stuff. You don't really have to tiptoe that much around, oh, this needs to be this way or this needs to be that way. Whereas any connection between him and Kenobi has to be very specifically thought out, and very delicately planned. So that's kind of where I'm at. I want some Vader. I want more Vader. Everything we got from Vader in this show was fantastic. Um, I don't know what they do with the season 2 of Kenobi. I literally don't know what you do with it unless it's just focused on Reva and Vader. Which, why is it Obi-Wan Kenobi
Yeah.
season 2? But
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't know that I like. I think trying to make a Vader show in between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, it feels like that is starting to retread ground in terms of we have not only do we have the Obi-Wan show, we have Jedi Fallen Order, which is a Jedi who's on the run, being hunted by Inquisitors. Vader's in the mix. We have, I think, some of the Ahsoka stuff deals with her being on the run and Vader.
yeah, but these are the things you're describing are all from the Jedi's point of view, and Vader shows up for a sliver of the story. I think I would much rather see the meat of it be Vader and what he's trying to accomplish, and seeing more of him just being this powerful, terrifying force in the universe. Um,
I,
all of those other
yeah,
things are just kind of a sliver of him kind of showing up here or there, but
I don't know. I kind of like that there's something mysterious about him when you don't get
that's
quite as
true.
much. But I
And
will
if
say,
they mess it up, that only
then it would
makes
suck.
things worse.
That's yeah. I will say I would be interested if they tried a Vader show like that. The idea of him like being Vader and like expanding his empire. What I would really like, preferably, would be like there's a series of books called the Thrawn trilogy, which takes place like right at or shortly after Return of the Jedi, I believe, and it deals with the Empire, and I guess Vader is not alive anymore at that point, so that wouldn't work. But there are some other points where Vader is like dealing with other Imperial like higher ups and their politics within the organization, and like Vader is one chain of command, but there's others. I'm forgetting some of the books these happen in, but I would love some storylines that are maybe a little bit outside of that side of things. But maybe the Jedi hunting would be cool. I wouldn't be against something like that. I think that would be neat. Much better, certainly, than another season of Obi-Wan. Like let's let this be. Let Obi-Wan relax in peace in the desert with Qui-Gon.
Retirement. Retire
Yeah.
with Qui-Gon. Yeah, I agree. We'll see. Time will tell. Will we get an Obi-Wan Kenobi season 2? We probably will somehow. We probably will. And we'll be here to talk about it and complain some more and pick out some good moments. So I think that's everything. Yeah, we're all done. We get to look forward now to some Mandalorian coming, and I can't wait for the Ahsoka show that's coming next year. So hopefully, hopefully the writing can be a little bit better for those. But yeah, thank you. I think that'll do it for Obi-Wan Kenobi, and thanks for joining us. Remember, you can find us over on Patreon at patreon.com/neverlag, and we really appreciate any support here on YouTube or listening wherever you get your podcast from. So we will catch you on the next. I don't know what we'll be watching next, but hopefully we'll see you there.